Good evening from Goa and good morning, afternoon, evening, or night to you, wherever you are. I'm Tahir Norona, and on behalf of all of us at the Charles Correa Foundation, I would like to welcome you to our award ceremony. In April this year, because of the COVID pandemic and all the complications that arose from there, we had to think about our work, particularly our public fora. We normally organize lectures, workshops, and conferences, and this year we had to do it all online. And as many of you know, after many months of working from home, maintaining engagement across the screen is difficult. Detached. Our late patron Charles Correa was often regarded as an initiator of urban discourse in India. And today we're at a critical point for two projects that we took on in the last few months. The 2020 edition of our biannual conference, the Z-Axis, which we themed You and Your Neighborhood, and a Nagari Short Film Competition. What does a competition on neighborhood improvement have in common with short films? We think it's rather simple. It comes down to the architect, planner, researcher, or filmmaker's ability, an ability that they inculcate and nurture over many years, an ability to notice. And so, to join us, we want you to join us today evening as we explore some wonderful projects created by brilliant young people, starting with the Nagari Short Film Competition. Nagari Short Film Competition is an annual competition designed to guide and develop films that focus on urban issues specific to Indian cities. Nagari intends to be a bioscope for the city, and through urban conditions and engage with issues.
মহানগৰত বানপানীৰ সমস্যা সমাধানৰ প্ৰতিশ্ৰুতি হৈ থাকি যায়।
ভৰ বাৰিষা নাহুতেই খুদ ৰজাঘৰৰ পদূলিতে বৰ্তমান কৃত্ৰিম বানৰ আচুৰ।
এফালে কৰোনাৰ সন্ত্ৰাস, আনফালে বানপানীৰ
Heavy downpour in the last 24 hours has triggered flash floods in different parts of Guwahati city.
পথছোৱাৰ দৰে বৰ্তমান বুৰ গৈছে একাঠু পানীৰ তলত।
पानी नहीं कोई भी हम लोग भी ऐसे ही
They are not owned one. Just occupied, that's all. Illegal occupation, that's all. And that also the government not removed anyone.
ஸ்ட்ரைட்டாக வந்து கையை வடிச்சாங்க, ஜேசிபி கூப்பிட்டு வந்தாங்க, இடிச்சிட்டாங்க, உடனே டக்கு டக்குன்னு சாமான் எடுத்து வச்சு அனுப்பிச்சி விட்டாங்க.
எனக்கு 52 வயசு ஆகுமா. என்னோடய பேர் அஞ்சாலை. நாங்கள் எங்கள் பூர்வீகமே பூவையில் தான் வாழ்ந்தோம். பெரிய பாரிஸில் தான் நாங்கள் வாழ்க்கையாக நடத்தினோம். பாட்டி பாட்டை காலில் எங்கள் அம்மா எங்கள் அப்பா காலத்தில் இருந்து அவங்க வந்து 70 வருஷமாக அந்த பூர்வீகம் அந்த பூவையில் வாழ்ந்துருந்தாங்க. நாங்களும் வந்து 42 வருஷமாக அங்கே இருந்தோம். பாரிஸ்லேயே இருந்தோம். ரொம்ப நல்லா வசதியாக இருந்தோம். நாங்கள் எந்த கஷ்டமே தெரியாது. நம்மளுக்கு பஸ் செலவும் இல்லை, எந்த இதுவும் இல்லை. பக்கத்தில் ஸ்கூல் இருக்குது. பிள்ளைங்களுக்கு ஏதோ சம்பாதிச்சுன்னு வந்தால் அந்தந்த டைமுக்கு சாப்பாடு செய்து அதுங்களுக்கு போடலாம். நாங்கள் உள்ளே தான் போனோம், பஸ் ஸ்டாண்டுக்குள்ளே தான். இல்லை நைட்டில் வண்டிங்க போகாது, வண்டிங்க வராது, ஜனங்க நடமாட்டேங்குது. அப்போ குளிச்சுக்கோ நைட்டில் மணி 2 மணிக்கு 1 மணிக்கு. நான் பார்க்கணும் பஸ் வருதா இல்லையான்னு பார்த்து அதுங்களை வச்சுன்னு தான் காப்பாற்றணும். ஒரு பயம்தான் இருக்குது. நாங்கள் அப்படி தான் வாழ்ந்துட்டோமே, அது எங்களுக்கு தெரியாது.
6 வருஷத்தில் வந்து எல்லா மாற்றமும் வருஷம் இல்லைப்பா. 6 வருஷம் 6ஆம் மாதம் 22ஆம் தேதி நம்ம டோட்டலாக ஏரியா வச்சுருக்கோம்.
பாரிஸ்லேயே இருந்தோம். ரொம்ப நல்லா வசதியாக இருந்தோம். நாங்கள் இங்கே வாயிறதோடு அங்கே வாயிறது தான் எங்களுக்கு நல்ல வாழ்க்கை. எங்களோட வாழ்க்கையே வேஸ்ட்டாக போச்சு. இந்த இடத்துல வந்து போகிறதுக்கு வர்றதுக்கு 2 மணி நேரம் 2 மணி நேரம் ஆகிடுது. 2 மணி நேரத்தில் நாங்கள் அது இப்போ போய் என்ன சம்பாதிக்கிறது. இங்கே வந்து சோறாக்கி துண்டுற கூட நேரம் இல்லை எங்களுக்கு. 200-300 சம்பாதிக்கிறது பஸ்ஸுக்கே போயிடுது. அதை நாங்கள் வச்சு என்னத்தை நாங்கள் வீடு குடும்பம் நடத்தின்னு வர்றது, பிள்ளைங்களுக்கு என்ன செலவு பண்ணுறது. ஒன்று ஒரு நாளைக்கு எங்களுக்கு கொடுத்துன்னு இருந்தாங்க தண்ணி வசதி வந்து. அதுக்கப்புறம் 2 நாள் பொறுத்து வந்தது. அதுக்கப்புறம் 3 நாள் ஒரு வாட்டி தண்ணி வந்து. அதுக்கப்புறம் இப்போ வர்றது வந்து 10 நாளைக்கு ஒரு வாட்டி, இல்லை ஒரு வாரத்துக்கு ஒரு வாட்டி. நம்ம ஒரு நாளைக்கு ஒரே ஒரு நாள் தான் விட்றாங்க தண்ணி. அந்தமாரி விட்டால் நாங்கள் பிள்ளைங்களை குளிப்பாடுறதா, இல்லை இருக்கிறக்கு நாங்கள் குளிக்கிறதா, இல்லை இப்போ சாப்பாடு யூஸ் பண்ணுறதா, இல்லை துணிமணியை சுத்தம் பண்ணுறதா, இவ்வளோலாம் வசதி இங்கே இல்லை. காவு அடுப்பு ரொம்ப கிளச்சி இது வேறு. பிள்ளைங்களுக்கு அடிக்கடிக்கு உடம்பு சரியாத உயிர்து. ஒரே ஒரு அம்மா ஹாஸ்பிட்டல் தான் இருக்குது. அர்ஜென்ட்டுக்குன்னு போனாங்க பார்க்க மாட்டாங்க. மித்ததெல்லாம் பணம் கட்டி தான் வெளியே பார்க்கணும். ஆனால் கவர்மெண்ட் ஹாஸ்பிட்டல்லாம் கட்டல அந்த இடத்துல. ஆனால் எவ்வளோ உயிர் தான் சாதாரணம் அந்த இடத்துல. அங்கே எதனா ஒன்று ஆச்சுன்னா ஜிஹெச் எரிஞ்சதுக்கு வந்து கேஎம்ஸு, அப்படி இல்லையா ஸ்டாலின் தான் வரும். இப்போ 25 கிலோமீட்டர்லேருந்து வரணும். அந்த உயிருக்கு என்ன கேரண்டி? பையன் தானே கொஞ்ச நேரம் அதை அங்கேருந்து தூக்கின்னு வந்து கேஎம்சியில் சாங்காட்டி என் பிள்ளை இருந்துச்சு. அங்கேருந்து தூக்கின்னு 25 கிலோமீட்டர்லேருந்து தூக்கின்னு வர்றதுக்கு 1/2 ஹவரில் போகுதுன்னா அது நம்மளோட மனசு நம்ம பெற்று அதை வளர்த்து எவ்வளோ கஷ்டப்பட்டு இருக்கும். இப்போ திடீர்னு அவருக்கு வீடு இடம்ன்றாங்க. இந்த இடத்த மாற்றி செங்கல்பட்டு லைனில் கொடுக்குறேன்றாங்க. நாங்கள் இங்கேருந்து போகிறதுக்கே எவ்வளோ சிரமப்படுறோம். இன்னும் அந்த செங்கல்பட்டு லைனில் போனால் எங்களுக்கு எவ்வளோ சிரமம் இருக்கும். அங்கேருந்து போயிட்டு வரோம். எப்படி போகிறதுக்கு வர்றதுக்கே லைஃபே போயிடுமா? எங்களுக்கு சம்பாரணம் கொடுக்குறதே இந்த இடம் தான், நாங்கள் போய்க்கிறதும் இந்த இடம் தான். இந்த இடத்த விட்டு நாங்கள்
हा कोलीवाडा म्हणजे आमच्या पूर्वजाचं गाव. आम्हाला दुसरं गाव नाही, आम्हाला दुसरे ठिकाणी घर नाही. हेच आमचं गाव आहे, हेच आमचे हे.
कौलारू घर कुडा मातीची, कुडा मातीची, शान होती आमचे कोल्यांची. दारी अंगण दादा तुळशी वृंदावन, जावल्याची वलन हाई टोपल्या खोपन रे, जावल्याची वलन हाई टोपल्या खोपन. कणगी भरली होती म्हावऱ्याची, सुके म्हावऱ्याची, शान होती आमचे कोल्यांची. पाण्यानं झाली आम्ही टाकताव दर्यानं, 2-3 वावन झालं भरे म्हावऱ्यानं र, 2-3 वावन झालं भरे म्हावऱ्यानं. कमाई होती आमच्या मेहनतीची, आमच्या हिमतीची, शान होती आमचे कोल्यांची.
पहिला रोज यायची मच्छी, रोजच यायची, ती 12 तास काम करायचे. आणि आता काय 2-2 दिवस येत नाही, कमीच भेटते. 15 दिवस येत नाही, 10 दिवस येत नाही.
कोळीवाड्याचा सिद्धांत असा आहे की ज्या ठिकाणी मासळी उतरण्याचं बंदर असलं पाहिजे, असावं लागतं, मासळी सुकवण्याच्या जागा असावं लागतात आणि घरं बांधण्यासाठी जमीन लागावी लागते. या 3 गोष्टीने कोळीवाडा सजलेला असतो.
नारळ पूनम शिमगा दिवाळी दसरा, समदे मिळून करीत होतो सण साजरा रे, समदे मिळून करीत होतो सण साजरा. एकी हाय आमचे या गावाची, साऱ्या गावाची, शान होती आमचे कोल्यांची. गाव पण गेला तर शहर झायलंय, समिंदर खाड्यांचं गटार झायलंय र, समिंदर खाड्यांचं गटार झायलंय. उपासमारी हाय भूमिपुत्रांची शान होती आमचे कोल्यांची. कौलारू घरांची झायली आता मारी क्लस्टर एसार्ये हनले आमचे दारी क्लस्टर एसार्ये हनले आमचे दारी. दादागिरी हाया सरकारची दादा सरकारची शान होती आमचे कोल्यांची.
आम्हाला तुमचा विकास पाहिजेच कसा. आम्हाला नको तुमचा विकास. आम्ही आमचा स्वयंविकास करून घेतला. आम्हाला आता गरज नाही. आता जे काय आहे आमचं शाबूत ठेवा इतकीच मेहरबानी.
मत दाई नमलो इटा को केली जाम
ए रुमक लेगी आ साबि 10,000 ऊपर थई गेछु आ
Super Hits 93.5 Red FM Guwahati moi RJ Mandy aho sinaki
मास्टर बेडरूम 14 बाई 13 का मास्टर बेडरूम है इसमें, जिसमें सनलाइट जो है नेचुरल रेज जो है वो बहुत ज़्यादा बहुत आती है.
এই চহৰৰ মস্তানা মই সকলোৱে মোক দিৱানা কয় মই দিৱানা দিল মস্তানা মই দিৱানা দিল মস্তানা উঠা 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 চলে গাড়ী মোৰ আহা আহা যাবা কোন মই কোন
तुमच्यासाठी स्वप्न आणि तो सौख्याचे पुन्हा नव्याने बसवू घरकुल तुमच्या मोठ्या जागेचे दारी घेऊन आलो संधी उभारू टॉवर इमारती जागा मोठी छान सुविधा बनाल तुम्ही करोडपती पूर्ण विकासी चर्चा सुटली खळबळ साऱ्या घरातून नसलेल्या ही भिंती पडल्या विभक्त होऊन मनातून हक्कासाठी जावा जावा भाऊ विजाले हाडवैरी पुन्हा कशी ती फिरे दवंडी विकासकाची घरोघरी जाणून आहे विकासक ही मानसिकता या वर्गाची दावी आवळा काडी कोळा असती खेळी बिल्डरची कोणी होत असे मुख्य प्रवर्तक स्थापून संस्था सहकारी विदूर होऊन हात मिळवणे बिल्डरशी मागील दारी विरोध करता जरा कुणीही नोटा भरती तोंडाशी तरी नसतो जुमानला तर गाठ पडते प्राणाशी सामदाम आणि दंडभेद ही विकासकाची हत्यारे सौदा करी ते रहिवाशांच्या मुख्य प्रवर्तक परभारे ठेवली ज्या खंड्यावर तोच पाडितो तोंडाशी हताश होऊन निराशाने करी स्वाक्षरी रहिवाशी जावे कुठल्या झेंड्याखाली तोही नसतो निष्ठेचा खिशात घाली बिल्डर त्याशी दाम पुरवणी किमतीचा नसते धोरण स्थिर कधीही सरकारच्याही दरबारी उणीव त्यातील जाणून बिल्डर तोही करीतो शिरजोरी विकास कसला माणूस खचला वाली नाही गरीबाचा तोंड दाबुनी मुक्क मारितो निर्देराक्षी बिल्डरचा चुकले कोठे काय बरोबर जाळ लावती कर्माला कर्म नव्हे हे अज्ञानाचे फलित लाभले नशिबाला करावे कसे होईल हे सुखधाम हवे नियोजन हवा तो संयम मतभेदांना द्या विराम मिळून तपशील चर्चा करूया विकास होईल भाग्याचा सहकारी ही इमान राखीत धडा गिरवतील त्यागाचा नसो कुणाचा स्वार्थ खासगी नसो कुणी वा विकलेला माणूस असतो बिल्डर सुद्धा एकजुटीला दबलेला सवलत सुविधा मिळून घेऊ असतील आपल्या हक्काच्या नको प्रलोभन नकोच आमिषे मायावी त्या बिल्डरच्या घोरपडी सम असेल जर का ऐकी तुमच्या निष्ठेची काय ब्याईली माय कुणाची देतील धमकी मरणाची सबुरी राखा संयम ठेवा कास धरून या सत्याची नको कुणाचा झेंडा किंवा लुडबुड कुठल्या पक्षाची म्हाडा असू द्या वा कुठल्याही अन्य ती संस्था सरकारी जाणून घेऊन नियमावली असते जी का दरबारी वेचा त्यातील संधी आणि पाठपुरवठा जिद्दीचा मिळेल रस्ता नक्की तुमच्या भविष्यातल्या स्वप्नांचा ठेवा दूर ही राजकारणी नकोच त्यांची मध्यस्थी पूर्ण विकसित ध्येयासाठी मदत घेऊया सरकारी स्वप्न नव्याचे नव्या घराचे होईल तुमचे जरतारी
I am 75 years. इधर भी बड़ा हुआ है। यह बिल्डिंग को 200 साल हुआ, 200 साल, 200 ईयर।
और ये पूरा हेरिटेज एरिया लगता है। थिएटर्स आर हियर, नरीमन पॉइंट, चौपाटी, all theaters and everything in the same area. So we are not thinking to going for the summer.
रात को ना आवाज करता है, ये बैठती है बिल्डिंग, कर कर ऐसा आवाज आता है। हाँ, देता है सुनाई, उठ जाती है, बैठ जाती है और माँ को नमस्कार करती है, माँ बचा लेना।
ये सब इधर चाहिए, ये पूरा घर का
पुराने चीज से बहुत बहुत लगाव है, मुझे बहुत पसंद आता है, पुरानी चीज बहुत पसंद आती है।
बिल्डिंग का तो हालत आपने देखा होगा, रिपेयरिंग करने की हालत है ही नहीं है बिल्डिंग की। अभी आप यकीन मानो कि हम लोग कैसे रहते होंगे।
अरे बारिश
हम लोग के आगे मजबूरी है, क्या करें।
इधर से गिरा कि इधर से गिरा, ऐसा डर लग जाता है।
जो इधर काम करने वाले थे अभी मजदूर लोग, वो लोग ने बोला कि भाई इधर से हट जाओ, आप भी गिरेगा तो कोई भरोसा है नहीं।
वॉशरूम मध्ये बसायला गेल्यानंतर भीती वाटते की कधी बसेल.
छत्री घेऊन बसायला
छत्री घेऊन बसायला लागतो वॉशरूम मध्ये. हा पावसामध्ये छत्री घेऊन ऑलमोस्ट बसायला लागतो. पाऊस पडला ना का बसताना भीती वाटते की कधी बसेल, बसता बसता खाली जाऊ काय असं आहे.
ती चालीवाला रात्री बसून काढते जेव्हा पाऊस येते ना तेव्हा. पुसा पुसा इकडे पुस तिथे पुस इथे बालदी ठेव इथे टोप ठेव असं. हा रात्रभर हे सगळे तेच करत असतात. झोप नाही आम्हाला.
एक ही फोटो बचा है, बस ये 2-3. मेरी दादी के फोटो सब खराब हो गए, खराब हो जाते हैं, फिर रहती हैं, सोच क्या करेंगे.
ते आता आमचं काय 125 रुपये भाडं आहे ना.
123 आहे.
भाड्यामध्ये मला सांगा ह्या एरियामध्ये भाड्यावरती कमीत कमी 15,000 ते 20,000 रुपये भाडं आहे. आता पगार आम्ही किती घेतो? 15,000 रुपये पगार घेतो.
10 साल बाहर रहो, 15 साल बाहर रहो, ऐसा हो जाता है.
ऐसा हो जाता है.
तो ऐसा हम लोग नहीं जाएगा. हम लोग को लिख के मांगता है कि इतना साल में तुम्हारा मकान बना के हम लोग दे देंगे, तभी हम लोग निकलेगा, ऐसा नहीं निकलेगा.
अपने को तो जरूर का ही मरने का, इधर भी मरने का उधर भी मरने का, ऐसी हालत हो गई है.
म्हणजे सगळ्या बाजूने मरण आमचं होत आहे ना, घर मालकाचं होत आहे. बिल्डर तर रेडीच आहे घ्यायला. अजून म्हाडामधून प्रोसिजर होईल तेव्हा होईल. घर मालक सोडत नाही, म्हणजे मरतोय सगळ्या बाजूने आम्हीच.
झोपडी असली तरी आपली झोपडी आहे ती, असं आहे ना. म्हणजे जरी अशी बिल्डिंग पडायला आले तरी घर आहे ना ते. असं आहे.
एक पर्सन का जिसका शादी हो गया था, हफ्ता नहीं हुआ था, रात को उसको लगा बिल्डिंग गिर गया पर्सन, तो उसने दरवाजा खोला, उसको कुछ दिखा नहीं, तो पहला बाहर पैर निकाला, एक ही लादी था, उसके आगे कुछ नहीं था, पूरा पैसे चाली था ही नहीं. उसने अंदर में बाहर पैर भी देखा, फिर उतना साला कुछ दिखता नहीं है, अंदर आ गया, दरवाजा बंद किया. सुबह उठ के खोलता है तो बाहर देखता है तो बाहर पैसे है ही नहीं.
छोड़ना ही नहीं है कोई भी हालत में. अभी मेरे पास 1 रुपया नहीं होगा तो भी मैं ये छोड़ूंगा नहीं, ये घर.
को तो बहुत अच्छा लगता है. हमको इधर से निकालेगा तो हम तो मर जाऊंगा ऐसा लगता है. इधर बहुत अच्छा लगता है.
मुंबई ये सिर्फ एक शहर नहीं बल्कि एक कहानी है। ये कहानी इतनी मशहूर है कि काल्पनिक सी लगती है। इस कहानी में कई पात्र हैं और इन पात्रों की भी अपनी अपनी कहानियां हैं। इन्हीं में से एक महत्वपूर्ण पात्र प्रवासी मजदूर है। देश भर से लाखों मजदूर अपनी मजबूरियां और सपने लेकर इस कहानी का हिस्सा बनने शहर आ जाते हैं। आज हम जिस समृद्ध मुंबई शहर को जानते हैं वह इन मजदूरों द्वारा बनाया हुआ है। मुंबई और ठाणे लगभग 1 करोड़ प्रवासियों का घर है, जिनमें से अधिकांश मजदूर कंस्ट्रक्शन और मैन्युफैक्चरिंग जैसे क्षेत्रों में काम करते हैं। स्ट्रीट हॉकर्स, टैक्सी ड्राइवर, मेट्रो निर्माण श्रमिक आदि शहर के अभिन्न अंग है, पर हम उन्हें देखकर भी अनदेखा कर देते हैं। हम आर्किटेक्ट्स और अर्बन डिज़ाइनर्स की कल्पनाओं को ये मजदूर ही वास्तविकताओं में बदलते हैं। पर वे कहाँ रहते हैं, कैसे रहते हैं हम उनके बारे में नहीं सोचते। देश में लगभग 92% कामगार अनौपचारिक क्षेत्र में काम करते हैं, जिनके पास न तो कोई लिखित कॉन्ट्रैक्ट और न कोई राजनीतिक प्रतिनिधित्व है। इन्हीं कुछ कारणों की वजह से वे बेहतर लिविंग और वर्किंग कंडीशंस की मांग नहीं कर पा रहे हैं। जिस शहर को उन्होंने बनाया वे उसी में अदृश्य है। अप्रैल 2020 में कोरोना महामारी के बीच ये अदृश्य मजदूर जो दीवारों के पीछे चुपचाप काम करते थे, सड़क पर नजर आए। शहर को पहली बार पता चला कि शहर को बनाने वाले कौन हैं। अचानक आई बेरोजगारी के कारण किराया देना या 2 वक्त का खाना जुटाना नामुमकिन हो गया था और वो मजबूरी में शहर को छोड़ अपने गांव चले गया। इन्हीं लाखों मजदूरों में से एक असगर अली है। असगर अली मोहम्मद नसीम और अन्य 2 साथियों के साथ धारावी के एक बैग सिलाई कारखाने में रहते और काम करते हैं।
जमीन तो मेरे पास 1 कट्ठा भी नहीं, 1 धूर भी नहीं है। हम लोग झोपड़ी टांग के रह रहे गांव के अंदर में, वो भी भाड़े पर रहता हूँ।
फैमिली को लाएंगे तो यहाँ कहाँ बाद में बाथरूम का टेंशन, रहेगी कहाँ, नहाएगी कहाँ। जैसे मेरे माँ बाप तकलीफ उठाए वैसे हम लोग भी तकलीफ उठा रहे हैं। 6 साल का लड़का अभी तक कम से कम उसको पढ़ना लिखना चाहिए, मगर उतने हम लोग की कमाई नहीं है। हम लोग 12,000 रुपया कमाने वाले, 7,000 भाड़ा भर देंगे तो हम लोग फिर खाएंगे क्या चीज़।
टॉयलेट जाने में 20 मिनट लगता है, वहाँ भी 10-15 मिनट आपको वहाँ टॉयलेट के लिए इंतजार करना पड़ेगा। वो नहीं निकला तो समझ लीजिए इसी जगह रहे। पेट खराब हो गया तो समझ लीजिए कि अंदर ही कारखाने के अंदर में हो जाएगा वो।
असल में गवर्नमेंट की तरफ से तो इतना बड़ा आपदा था जो कोरोना का, उसके बाद लॉकडाउन था, तो इसमें आप यकीन करो ना करो वो आपका मामला है, लेकिन हम लोगों को एक हॉस्पिटल की खिचड़ी के अलावा कभी कुछ नहीं मिला।
कहते हैं सरकार के जाओ गाड़ी फ्री है। अरे गाड़ी फ्री किधर है? जो 500 रुपये की जगह पर 1000 रुपया ले ही रहा, तो फ्री किधर हो गया गाड़ी? पुलिस चौकी में गए हम लोग, फार्म भराने के लगे, वहाँ 200-200 रुपया लग गया। हमारे लोग का समझिए कि 6,000 रुपया खाली बम्बे पहुँचने में लग गया है।
प्रवासी संकट पर बढ़ते आलोचना के बीच सरकार ने जल्दबाजी में अफोर्डेबल रेंटल हाउसिंग कॉम्प्लेक्स स्कीम लॉन्च की।
प्रवासी मजदूर और शहरी गरीब के लिए जहां वो काम करते हैं शहरों में, वहां पर कम कीमत पर उनको किराए पर मकान मिल पाए, रहने की सुविधा मिल पाए।
गवर्नमेंट की तरफ से 10 रुपये का 10 पैसे का सहायता नहीं मिला, खाने को नहीं मिला तो घर कहाँ से देंगे ये लोग?
सरकार प्रवासी मजदूरों को शहरों में कम किराए पर सस्ते
इन्होंने बहुत
मकान
ज्यादा त्याग इसके लिए किया
मजदूरों के रहने के लिए शहर को
और ये 5,000 करोड़ रुपए की
रेंटल हाउसिंग कॉम्प्लेक्स
विशेष सुविधा
इसके अलावा उद्योगों को
केवल इनके लिए रेहड़ी ठेला लगाने वाले, पटरी पर सामान बेचने वाले श्रमिक साथी इनके लिए लेकर आए। ये 10,000 की इनको प्रति व्यक्ति सुविधा मिल सकती है, क्योंकि किसी को चाय बेचनी है, सब्जी बेचनी है, कुछ और बेचना है।
पहले ये आनंदवन था, फिर आनंदवन के बाद काशी हुआ, काशी के बाद लोग उर्दू शब्द में बनारस बोलते हैं। अब अंग्रेज लोग आए तो वाराणसी बोलते हैं। वरुणा 80 का जो संगम होता है, तो वाराणसी शहर एक टापू टाइप पर है और 500 वर्ष पुरानी, सबसे पुरानी काशी नगरी है। ये ये ओल्ड सिटी है सर, हेरिटेज सिटी है, ना इसको तोड़ा जा सकता है ना बनाया जा सकता है सर। तो ये किस आधार पर इन्होंने तोड़ा है बिल्डिंगों को? हेरिटेज सिटी को ना तोड़ा जा सकता है। इतना चौड़ा जगह किसके लिए चाहिए? यात्री के लिए इतना चौड़ा जगह नहीं चाहिए। हेलीकॉप्टर उतरने के लिए या फिर कार आने के लिए या बस आने के लिए सुविधा की जा रही है सर। जब पतली गलियां रहेगी तो बनारस का वजूद क्या रहेगा? लेकिन हम समझते हैं बनारस बदल रहा है। अब बदलने से टूरिज्म आएंगे नहीं कभी। टूरिज्म जब भी आएंगे पतली गलियां ही घूमने आएंगे। अब स्मार्ट सिटी नहीं सर, ये उड़ता शहर बनारस बन जाएगा, उड़ता शहर काशी हो जाएगा। मतलब कि बनारस खत्म हो रहा है और क्यूटो आ रहा है। अभी मतलब फिर आप घाट पे फोटोग्राफी करते हैं? जी अभी तो करते हैं नहीं, लेकिन करते थे। और है में बहुत फर्क पड़ता है भैया। क्यों नहीं कर रहे हैं? क्योंकि यात्री नहीं आ रहे, टूरिज्म नहीं आ रहे हैं। और वहाँ पे क्या है कि अभी जब टूरिज्म आएंगे नहीं तो हम कमाई कर नहीं सकते। और अलग अलग घाट पे ही अलग अलग लोग फोटोग्राफर रहते हैं। जिस घाट का जो फोटोग्राफर उसी घाट पे फोटोग्राफी कर सकता है और किसी घाट पर जाकर फोटोग्राफी नहीं कर सकता। फ्लैश के साथ क्यों खींचते हैं इनको जी?
इससे क्या होता है कि इस चेहरे पे जो ये होता है डक्स आने से चेहरे पे खिलावट आ जाती है, दाग धब्बे नहीं आता और जो फेस होता है थोड़ा क्लीन हो जाता है। डर होने से अच्छा कि फेस पर थोड़ा सा क्लीन आ जाता है।
अच्छा, कैसे आई ये फोटो? अच्छी है क्या? अच्छी। मेरा मकान सी के तरफ 35 हरजन बस्ती में है, था यानी कि अभी तो है नहीं, था। पहले तो 2017 में इसका आरंभ हुआ था। 2017 में बोला गया कि विश्वनाथ गंगा को विश्वनाथ से मिलाना है। गंगा पाथवे का योजना बताया पहले, फिर बाद में कहे गली को चौड़ीकरण करना है, फिर गली को चौड़ीकरण के नाम पर पूरा मकान ही तोड़ दिए। इस समय किसके पास पैसा की कोट जाए? पहले अपन परिवार चला कि आपसे लड़ने जाए। सरकार से हम लड़ नहीं सकते, सरकार तो ऑलरेडी फ्री में लड़ेगी। हमारा कौन किसी, जो भी लड़ेगा पैसा लेगा। जिसको मैं कहूँगा है पागल है, लोग मुझे पागल कहेंगे। हाँ सर मैं पागल हूँ, मकान टूटने के बाद मैं पागल तो ही गया हूँ। जिनका वजूद खत्म कर दिए आप। आखिर मैं 6 पीढ़ी से रहता रहा वहाँ, जानते रहे लोग कि ये 6 पीढ़ी से यहाँ पर है। कोई भी आंख बंद कर मेरे घर आ सकता रहा। आज आप आ रहे हो तो मैं इस बार मिल रहा हूँ, आप भी मुझे आकर वहाँ ढूंढ रहे हैं ना सर। अगर मोबाइल नंबर नहीं होता तो आप मुझे वहाँ ढूंढते। ये क्यूटो बनाने के चक्कर में लगे हैं। क्यूटो में फिर भी इतिहास अपना सहयोग कर रखा है, तोड़ा नहीं है क्यूटो में। जो जापान में क्यूटो बना है वो क्यूटो बनाना चाह रहे थे शहर को। केवल एक मंदिर के लिए क्यूटो बनेगा सर? ₹300 का अपना टिकट बेच रहे हैं, 180 रुपए का गंगा आरती का टिकट बेच रहे हैं, सिर्फ ये टिकट बेच रहे हैं। एक समय आ गया सर जी कि गंगा जी को देखने के लिए हमको पैसा देना पड़ेगा सर जी। अगर अपने घर को अगर लाइट से सजा दिया तो स्मार्ट हो जाता। स्मार्ट बनाने से स्मार्ट होता है, उसमें कुछ परिवर्तन लाना चाहिए। लाइट सजाने से सिर्फ डेकोरेशन किया जाता है, और डेकोरेशन कर रहे हैं।
धर्म नगरी काशी में अलकनंदा क्रूज का संचालन फिर से शुरू हो गया है। पूरी तरह से एयर कंडीशनड इस क्रूज में बैठने के लिए आरामदायक सीट है। रूफटॉप रेस्टोरेंट में लोग बैठकर अपने मनपसंद लंच और ब्रंच का लुत्फ उठा सकते हैं।
Mr. Pandey,
It's a city still on the edge.
The world inner city of Ahmedabad, there is an eerie calm on the surface, but violence is just around the corner in an area where Hindus and Muslims live cheek by jowl. Defense Minister just told us that there is a brigade pushing here, another brigade is arriving.
2 days after the Sabarmati Express was burnt in Godhra, 3 hours from Ahmedabad,
The morning after a night of carnage.
the police have recovered bodies of at least 12 children and 10 adults.
आमतौर पर हम लोग उन इलाकों में शरण ले रहे हैं जहाँ उनके अपने समुदाय के लोग ज्यादा हैं।
60 people have been killed in mob frenzy. There are reports of violence.
अहमदाबाद में बहुत सारी जगहों पर इस तरह से दंगे हुए जिसमें बड़े पैमाने पे लोगों का नरसंहार हुआ। उसके बाद लोगों ने अपनी लाइफ और सिक्योरिटी को ध्यान में रखते हुए एक ऐसी जगह पे कि जहाँ पे उनकी लाइफ की सिक्योरिटी रहे वहाँ रहना पसंद किया। तो जिसमें जुहापुरा सबसे बड़ा जगह रहा जहाँ पे लोग एक साथ आकर रहने लगे बहुत सारे तादाद में दंगों के बाद। वो अहमदाबाद के आप सैटेलाइट और जुहापुरा जो कि दोनों एडजॉइनिंग है, आप दोनों को जब कंपेयर करेंगे तो दोनों में जमीन आसमान का फर्क आप देखेंगे कि अगर रेलवे लाइन के इस तरफ डेवलपमेंट हो सकता है तो रेलवे लाइन की दूसरी तरफ डेवलपमेंट क्यों नहीं हो सकता है? रेलवे लाइन की दूसरी तरफ गार्डन्स क्यों नहीं बन सकते हैं? रेलवे लाइन की दूसरी तरफ स्विमिंग पूल्स, लाइब्रेरीज क्यों नहीं बन सकती हैं?
મુસ્લિમ કોમ્યુનિટી એક એવી છે કે સરકાર જોડે ના લડી ના ઝઘડીની પોતાના બલબૂતા ઉપર જીવવાવાળી પબ્લિક છે, બરાબર. આજ સુધી આટલા ટાઈમમાં આટલા જે અપરાધો થયા છે, જે બન્યું સરકારના કાનૂન ઉપર એનો અમલ કર્યો, એને અમલ કરીને એને સ્વીકાર કર્યું આજ સુધીની અંદર, બરાબર. તે છતાં એમને પણ સમજવું જોઈએ કે આ લોકો કોઈ માંગણી વગર નથી કરતા, તો આપણે ફરજ બને છે. આ એક જરૂરી છે, રોડ, રસ્તો, ગટર અને લાઇટ અને પાણી. તો હું હજી 4 સવા 4 આવશો 4 સવા 4 આવશે 3:30 વાગે શાંતિથી બનાવો
શાંતિથી તો એકે નહીં બનાવી શકું
તમારા માટે ઘર એટલે શું?
મારા માટે ઘર તો એક સપનું છે કે અગર માલિક મને આપે ને તો હું અહીંથી બહાર નીકળીને સારી જગ્યાએ વ્યવસ્થિત જગ્યાએ આગળ ફ્લેટ છે અથવા કોઈ પ્લોટિંગ પડતા હોય અહીંયા પ્લોટ પાડીને પર્સનલ મતલબ આપણું ટેનામેન્ટ ટાઈપ
આપણે ગામડામાં કેવું મોટું ફળિયાવાળું મકાન હોય એ રીતનું ને અલગ અલગ રૂમ હોય તો બચ્ચાઓના બી એમ કે અલગ મારા 3 બચ્ચા છે તો એમ કે અમે ચલો ઉંમર થઈ ગઈ તો આપણે નથી કહેતા કે બાળક મોટા થાય એટલે બધાનું પર્સનલ અલગ હોય પણ એ હોય ત્યારે હોય ના હોય તો એકમાં બી ગુજારો કરવો પડે નાનામાં બી પણ મોટાનું સપનું છે અમારું
यहाँ तरह तरह की अफवाहें फैलती हैं इसलिए हम कोई ऐसा कुछ रिस्क लेना नहीं चाहते हैं
साधन नहीं जाता है
वो लोग नौकरी की बॉर्डर पे हैं ये कोर्ट के बाजू में वो लोग रहते हैं हम यहाँ रहते हैं मगर वो अफवाहों को हम कोई वजूद नहीं मानते हैं
नंबर ऑफ मैसेजेस
अफवाहें भी आ रही है कि अभी 2 दिन पहले सब अफवाहें आ रही थी ट्रक में सब लोग निकले हैं इधर आएंगे उधर आएंगे इसलिए सब लोग क्या है कि अपने प्रोटेक्शन के लिए इधर जाग रहे हैं वैसे कोई प्रॉब्लम की बात नहीं है
Now we have our own supermarkets. This is a new one for 6 months. This is our own party plot. Our own party plot there. घर में न जाऊंगा गाली आते हुए नबी को देखेंगे उम्मती आते हुए नबी को देखेंगे उम्मती आते हुए नबी को देखेंगे उम्मती कहेंगे सारे खुशी खुशी आ रहे वो देखो मोहम्मद जिनमें बांधे कमली
Thanks for watching the film with us. I now request my director, Nandita Correa Merotra, to say a few words.
Thank you, Tahir. I've been very moved by this collection of films, 10 films, like a compilation of short stories. They tell us so much about what city and shelter mean to us. Like a short story, they're very focused, but it's the collection, the anthology, that begin to define in a contemporary voice the magnitude of our urban issues. The Charles Correa Foundation was founded to engage with education and research in human settlements. And for the first decade, we've been working within these realms through workshops, lectures, conferences, publications, and projects in Panjim where we're located. We've been working and developing approaches there, testing urban solutions and using Panjim as a crucible to challenge, to be innovative and find design solutions. But during this pandemic, we as a society, and not just as urbanists, but we began to see, I think, the meaning of space in the public realm with fresh eyes. We now see what is accessible and what isn't. And most importantly, we see what can and should be changed. So now it's even more contingent on us as urbanists to step in and imagine new possibilities and how space can be more accessible in equitable ways. Thus, our September conference, You and Your Neighbourhood, Z-Access 2020, centered on the question, how can we improve our own neighborhoods? Through the different sessions of the conference, we looked at neighborhoods at 4 scales. as a way to read the issues that emerge. By inviting speakers and discussants to talk about their experiences, their knowledge through research and practice, we could ponder possible solutions. The conference allowed us to look at the problems differently, look for design solutions, perhaps in places we hadn't looked before. And the conference also led us to two competitions, one that came directly out of the conference, a design competition for architects and urbanists to identify and develop a design solution at one of the 4 scales in the neighborhood. This competition, like the conference, was also called Your Neighbourhood. The second competition was the short film competition, the films that you've just seen, Nagari. This was intended to be complementary to the first one and came out of discussions with Anuj Bhagwati. Anuj, who knew that Charles loved films, asked us whether the foundation would like to commission some films that addressed urban issues as an homage to Charles's interests. That was such a brilliant idea. I think after some brainstorming, we realized they should be short films, and that the best way perhaps was to run it as a competition to nurture young talent and to allow for the issues that are at the forefront of, today of urban India to, that they should be explored. But most importantly, to engage another generation to see these issues, to go beyond and find ways to effectively communicate these more broadly in society. The Nagari Short Film Competition will hopefully be an annual event supporting the making of films on urbanism. Anuj Bhagwati and Archana and Amit Chandra, through their foundation, the A.T. Chandra Foundation, have supported both competitions as they believe in our cities. A.T. Chandra, like some of our other sponsors, have supported these events, and so I'd like to share with you a short message from them.
Namaste. As citizens of Mumbai and prolific global travelers, we both know how much a difference the quality of a city makes to the kind of days we have. And we are not just two individuals who feel this way. Soon, more than half of India will be urban. Importantly, cities are also the economic and industrial engines of our nation, contributing to more than 70% of the nation's GDP. As a result, they attract massive number of both migrants and businesses. Yet, nearly all our cities suffer from inadequate housing, chronic shortage of water, poor sanitation and public transport, scarce healthcare, and a lack of quality education for all. All of this hinders both economic and overall human development. It also poses a huge risk to the nation, which became all too clear in the time of COVID. It is for these reasons that it is both an imperative and an opportunity for our country to improve its cities with some degree of urgency.
Housing is a basic human need. Without housing for all, it is difficult to imagine humane living for all. Often, conversations about what would be critical investments for the country do not even include the issue of housing. However, many sustainable development goals, such as good health and well-being and clean water and sanitation, cannot be provided without housing as a prerequisite. Quality education too will be furthered significantly by decent housing, as giving students a safe and quiet place to live and enable electrification will allow them to absorb knowledge much more effectively. Today, in the majority of Indian cities, a third of the population live in inadequate housing. Greater Mumbai, the National Capital Region, and Calcutta house no less than 40 to 55% of their urban population in slums. Housing needs to be seen from the point of view of adequacy and not only affordability. People need to live in homes that are affordable but also safe and where they will not be displaced. These homes need to be healthy with adequate sunlight and air, water and sanitation, and connected to the many networks that underpin modern life: transport, friends, family and culture, and the internet. And also connected to social infrastructure like education, playgrounds, and recreational spaces.
At the ATE Chandra Foundation, it is our pleasure to work with partners like the Charles Correa Foundation, who are so focused on both raising awareness as well as finding solutions for these really important issues. We do believe that change begins with awareness, and we really hope that Nagari will give a voice to people's diverse views so all of us can better understand housing through different eyes and lenses. We're really delighted to have so many wonderful movies from different parts of the country in a wide range of languages that have come to us. While change may begin with awareness, for it to become a reality in our cities, we do believe that all of us need to work together: citizens, NGOs, corporates, and of course the government. It's heartening to see how such wonderful ideas from different projects across different dimensions have been produced for the Z-Axis conference as part of the contest. We're really looking forward to these projects being completed and making a positive impact for society as a whole. We wish everyone the very best for this conference, and of course, please do stay safe. Namaste.
This film competition has been a huge team effort, the involvement of many, many people. After the applications were received, close to 50 of them, our panel of mentors helped evaluate them. And through a long process of review and interviews, 10 teams and the outlines that they had submitted were selected. The teams consisted of three people. Each team consisted of three people: a filmmaker, an architect or urbanist, and a social scientist. The proposals were selected from all over India and illustrated the issues of housing adequacy through personal narratives. That we felt would make the issues more vivid. Each team was paired with a mentor, and our 5 mentors, guided 10 films. The mentors are all well-known documentary filmmakers. Beena Paul, Rajula Shah, Avijit Mukul Kishore, Tarun Bharatiya, and Sanjeev Shah. Sanjeev wore many hats. He was a mentor and also our advisor. He made all of this happen. Sanjeev made the short animation for us, our signature for Nagari, with the sound of the train whistling past, which is another homage to Charles and his love for trains. And Sanjeev also helped us assemble the wonderful team of mentors and suggested names for the jury. And really all the mentors were terrific. And I really enjoyed our long meetings with this team, as those define the parameters of Nagari as a short film competition. I'd now like to ask both Beena and Mukul to say a few words about the process from their perspective as mentors.
Hello. I'm glad to have been associated as a mentor with the first Nagari Short Film Competition initiated by Charles Correa Foundation. It's a very interesting set of 10 films that has emerged at the end of this exercise, done under all the duress of COVID, lockdowns, lack of accessibility, and all of these things that the filmmakers had to work around. And I'm very glad that the set of films that has emerged at the end of it is very interesting. It includes a music video and an animation film that come together to form a time capsule on the subject of housing, and specifically housing inadequacy in India at this point of time. I'm very eager to see how the kind of response these films get in the coming days. And I wish the participants the very best and would like to thank Charles Correa Foundation again for initiating this project.
Hello everybody, I'm Beena Paul. I'm a film editor by training and have edited a number of films over the last many years. I'm also the artistic director of the Kerala Film Festival. It has been a great pleasure and joy to collaborate with the Charles Correa Foundation on the Nagari Film Competition. This has been a very important issue that has been taken up about what urbanization is about, what it means to people. We got a huge number of entries, far more than we even expected, and spent a lot of time going through each of them, discussing among ourselves, among all the mentors, and choosing what we thought were the best 10 to compete and participate and have the films made. It has been a very exciting journey for me personally, because while one has always enjoyed working with young filmmakers, this was also, in terms of the subject, understanding the issues facing people as far as housing in cities is concerned. This was it was a real eye-opener. So for me, I think the subject was very interesting. I hope that it has been a useful experience for the younger filmmakers also who have participated. I watched all the films and have really enjoyed them. I think they're all very contemporary. There's a wide variety of issues, but they all point to serious concerns that exist in our cities today. I've been really privileged to be a part of this venture, and I congratulate all the filmmakers. I congratulate the Charles Correa Foundation for having this, giving this opportunity for young filmmakers. It would be really lovely if these films are seen widely and people are able to engage with the issues that have been raised. Thank you once again.
The jury consisted of 2 filmmakers and 3 architects. Sankalp Meshram, who chaired the jury, and Paromita Vora are both distinguished filmmakers. And Shilpa Ranade, Snehanshu Mukherjee, and Pradeep Dalal, all architects and academics, and are interested in film. So their discussions and deliberations were interesting. And to give you a glimpse into those discussions, we will run a short video where they speak about the films, followed by the awards.
There's something beautiful about the idea that people would engage with the city at multiple levels. And I think looking at the films together, one of the things you come to see is that cities are about interconnectedness. And there are imaginations of cities which seem to be linear, but in fact are not. So the films as a whole broke the binaries of urban and rural for me through narratives of migration, both from outside the city and also within the city. It also sort of broke the linearity of the discourse of development, right? That there's like everybody eventually goes down the same path towards the top, but rather it shows that cities continuously churning and changing in both good and bad ways. So I think that for me, the sort of relationship between the economics of making cities and of making elites at the cost of other people's, at the cost of other people not having the promise of citizenship fulfilled at some level. And the relationship with politics and history of these things really emerges in all the set of films together. And I hope that in terms of what comes next, like other films that are made in subsequent competitions, that the films become a kind of gesture or an invitation for people to think about cities in much more diverse ways. Like there are many, many different things alluded to in the set of films, and I'm hoping that more films will be made around all the kind of little stories that emerge.
I feel for me, the larger lesson of all of these 10 films has been to understand the homeowner, the aspirant homeowner, as somebody who has deep ideas, understanding, and reflection on the city. It's something that is not only the purview of people who are trained and professionally educated to be able to navigate these issues. So I feel that filmmakers were experimenting quite beautifully with the still image, the moving image, the static shot that allows for an image to kind of unfold without it kind of locked into another narrative. I liked how they were using sound, of course, in there, and of course the voices of the individual families and the characters in the films were very beautifully told, I felt. Overall, I also felt that there's a wonderful aspect of questioning that is happening around our urban environment. It isn't a given that these projects are meant for betterment, but there is a kind of thoughtful kind of consideration, like the Koliwada one, where we were looking at the impact of the coastal road and what it's doing to the livelihood for the fishermen. I wonder, impact studies are made, but then what is the larger cost to the people living there and their livelihood? So I feel that the entire process of this competition has allowed us to kind of think more deeply about whatever systems are in place for navigating public opinion, public participation in this process.
I find the idea of this competition itself a very, very good one, and especially the fact that it will be up there all on YouTube, because today almost anybody anywhere in the world accesses YouTube and tries to look for things that interest them or they want to know about. So I think it's a very, very good idea, and I look forward to the films that keep coming every year. This particular one was very, very informative for me, got me thinking about a lot of things. Each and every film was actually made quite differently, and each one of them brought something new to the screen.
Overall, I think it was a pleasure to watch all the films that were made, because they touched upon very current things that are happening in our cities all around. And actually, in a way, it was kind of interesting because many of them, the problems and issues that were highlighted could be transplanted into each other, but still they were so kind of local and rooted to where they were.
All 10 films were made with a lot of sincerity, a lot of dedication, and there was an attempt to find new forms. There was an attempt to find a different way of articulating the problems, and it was really difficult for all of us to select the winners. Thank you.
Now, on to the awards. We will give out 3 awards for the Nagari Short Film Competition. Since the vision of the competition was to use film as a medium to make urban issues more accessible to the public, we constituted a People's Choice Award. Here's how we did it. We uploaded the films and kept them for public viewing on YouTube for the last 10 days. Yesterday afternoon, we tallied the votes. The winner of this award will be given a cash prize of 25,000 rupees. At the time of tallying, the results were really close, but we had a winner, which is Mayavi Swapna Mahal a film made by Atharva Salaskar, Aditya Desai, and Vaibhav Kadam. Congratulations, Aditya, Atharva, and Vaibhav. From among the jury awards, the runner-up award, accompanied by a cash prize of 75,000 rupees, goes to Utta Banaras by Apurva Jaiswal and Manas Krishna. And finally, the winner of the jury award for the best short film made for the Nagari Short Film Competition 2020, with an accompanying cash prize of 1 lakh rupees, goes to A City Within a City by Prachi Bajania and Narendra Mangwani. Do you agree? Leave your comments in the chat below. Till then, let's hear the views of the Nagari jury.
Basically, we are very happy that we have selected 2 films. One for the first prize, which is City Within a City. And the second prize goes to Urta Banaras. We were able to arrive at a decision, but we, as the cliche goes, it was not easy and there were various opinions. So the other films too were close contenders.
But I think the 2 films that we've chosen also function as kind of partner films, because you see history between the 2 films, between the riots in Ahmedabad and a certain notion of what Banaras should be now. So shifts in what has happened in imagination of India at some level are visible in the 2 films. I think that both films touch on the dream and the memory of home in different ways. So I think City Within the City, really it was both poignant, empathetic, and yet never looking at people who have suffered in a flattened way as victims, but rather celebrated their resilience. And it showed you how attitudes and policy and law and history are all integrated.
A City Within a City, I love that project. I thought, of course, it's covering very kind of urgent, powerful issues. There's a very strong message, but it's said in the most straightforward way. I felt it was assured in the way it was made. There were amazing subjects, and you really understand the need and the value of housing beyond the practicalities of, space, even though that is identified in there that we want water, electricity, shelter, that it is much, much more than that. And I felt that all the films kind of point towards the desire for more than the pragmatics of housing, that we as educated architects and planners would always know, okay, there's a certain square footage, these are the kind of things that we have to as a bare minimum provide. And you realize that in the actual act of habitation, it's so much more.
મારા માટે ઘર તો એક સપનું છે કે અગર માલિક મને આપે ને તો હું અહીંથી બહાર નીકળીને સારી જગ્યાએ વ્યવસ્થિત જગ્યાએ આગળ ફ્લેટ છે અથવા કોઈ પ્લોટિંગ કરતા હોય અહીંયા પ્લોટ પાડીને પર્સનલ મતલબ આપણું ટેનામેન્ટ થાય.
આપણે ગામડામાં કેવું મોટું ફળિયાવાળું મકાન હોય એ રીતના ને અલગ અલગ રૂમ હોય તો બચ્ચાઓના બી કે અલગ. મારા 3 બચ્ચા છે તો કે અમે ચલો ઉંમર થઈ ગઈ તો આપણે નથી કહેતા કે બાળક મોટા થાય એટલે બધાનું પર્સનલ અલગ હોય, પણ એ હોય ત્યારે હોય, ના હોય તો એકમાં બી ગુજારો કરવો પડે નાના, પણ મોટાનું સપનું છે.
And the way it's been said is also pretty much where you make up your mind. It's not as if you're being, directed very forcefully into any one agenda or the other. The Urda Banaras is my personal favorite because it sort of does all of that without apparently trying to do so. And the fact that the main character is a photographer is very skillfully used, because it's his photographs that we get to see when we see that the famous Vishwanath Gully has been completely taken away and made into some kind of a piazza, which is shocking. And it's very, very cleverly done, how the whole thing comes up and how it leads up to those snapshots with the dates which you see at the corner.
इससे क्या होता है कि इस चेहरे पे जो ये डक्स आने से चेहरे पे क्लियर आ जाती है, दाग ढक के नहीं आता और जो फेस होता है थोड़ा क्लीन हो जाता है। डर होने से अच्छा कि फेस पर थोड़ा सा क्लीन आ जाता है। कैसे आएगी फोटो? अच्छी है क्या? मेरा मकान सी के तो बड़ा 35 हरिजन बस्ती में है था, यानी कि अभी तो है नहीं था।
Urta Banaras. I thought that the narrative, because of the character who was chosen to talk about it, was very interesting. He was very charismatic. He brought together a lot of complex ideas about, about home, his own identity, his own home, but this idea of Banaras itself, this idea that you have to this thing that stayed by, that you'll have to pay to see the Ganga one day, that you have to pay. So that was quite interesting, and this thing, and it kind of covered even cinematographically. It kind of you saw the construction sites happening on one side. You had the gullies of Banaras. You had the river. You had kind of different locations that were happening. Although you had this barren land, which was after it had been raised. You had these boats. You had the ghats. So all of that. So I think it was very evocative in the way it brought together these images also. So yeah, I think it was very powerful in that sense, and it was seamlessly made, beautifully made.
So I think the two that we have selected are really the best of the lot, or exceptional ones. But I would again reiterate that each and every one of them are worth seeing, and seeing more than once.
I want to congratulate the Charles Correa Foundation for coming up with this idea of this film competition, and of course Nandita Correa, who I think worked very hard to get it done. And what I want to also congratulate are the mentors who must have worked very hard to get these films up and running. I want to congratulate all the filmmakers who worked very hard. I want to definitely give my sympathy to those who didn't win the award, but be assured that we enjoyed your films very much, and we will be savoring your films in the future.
Well, congratulations to the prize winners and to all the teams. As I said before, I really do believe that all 10 films are wonderfully insightful and describe the myriad of issues of housing, and are the beginning of an archive on urban India, one that we are committed to build on in the coming years. Now, before we get to the second competition, I have a quick announcement. After the conference in September, Felipe Vera of the Inter-American Development Bank managed to locate funds for the conference proceedings to be published. He felt that given the issues that were discussed, that the conference needed to have a larger reach. We were thrilled. And so Florencia Rodriguez and her team at the publishing house, Lots of Architecture in Buenos Aires, will be publishing the book in a couple of weeks. It will be downloadable thanks to the generosity of IDB. And since we can't have printed copies with us today, we have a short message from Florencia introducing the book.
Hi everybody, and
Thank you, Nandita and the Charles Correa Foundation for inviting us to be here today at this award ceremony. I am Florencia Rodriguez, editorial director and founder of Lots of Architecture Publishers, an independent company that Pablo Gerson and I started 3 years ago. We are devoted to the dissemination and analysis of contemporary design, architecture, and all that conforms the built environment. Lots is meant to be a magnifying glass for diverse modes of thought and contributing debates that reflect on the present and advocate for better possible futures, through theoretical and playful lenses. As you know, the word lots means a large amount, a great deal, or frequently. But what is significant to us is that it also means going beyond specific discourses to visualize topics that have often been overlooked. We have been working recently on media around a variety of themes such as housing, migration, the global south, minorities' representation in design, or architecture in Antarctica, among others. During 2020, we published the second issue of our monographic series Nest Docs, titled Landscape as Urbanism in the Americas, which brings together understandings of landscape in Latin America beyond the usual readings. The third issue of Nest, a magazine on architecture, life, and urban culture, will be out in a few weeks. In this tumultuous year, it asks, what's an object? The 240-page volume gathers tales of entanglements, reenactments, and recollections, and we are thrilled to open the dialogue to our readers. What brings us together today is the wonderful publication in which we are collaborating with the Charles Correa Foundation. Earlier this year, the CCF organized You and Your Neighbourhood, a virtual conference that took as its starting point the video of Charles Correa's thesis at MIT, inviting international thinkers and practitioners to share their creative visions to uplift the public realm. Now, these presentations fill the pages of an autonomous publication that will be available soon. The book adapts the 4 scales and thresholds explored in the conference, the city, the commons, the neighborhood, and the doorstep, to a format that can spread the word of Charles Correa and the participants beyond the event. It will exist both in digital and printed format. Among other themes, it proposes approaches to Correa's relations with the ideas of Buckminster Fuller, the balcony as engager with the complexities of the urban during the pandemic and beyond, the continuing legacy of placemaking in India, and what it is to be learned from the bottom-up and top-down strategies to build playgrounds in the post-war Amsterdam. It is divided into 4 chapters, as well as a special introduction, a postscriptum, additional materials, and images. The publication will be of reference for anyone interested in public space, as it compiles discussions at different scales and in a variety of cultural contexts. We, our Lots of Architecture Publishers, are super proud and excited to be sharing this collaboration with you and to be taking part in these much-needed conversations. Thank you very much.
And so now finally to the second part of the award ceremony, the You and Your Neighbourhood Design Competition. We had an amazing response with over 70 entries in the 4 categories. I think that's indicative of the engagement with these issues within the profession of architects. Not only have the teams identified a public space that could be improved, but also developed an idea as to what could or often should be done in the space and make it more effective in the public realm. The 4 categories that we received entries in are, starting at the larger scale, redefining the city for the public, then the commons and the city, streets in the neighborhood, and finally the most intimate in the public realm, homes in the street. Each team presented their ideas on 4 boards with location plans and graphic information that define the issues, annotated drawings, before and after renderings, and a 2-minute video presentation to help the jury understand the narrative. I was amazed at the depth of the work, the thinking behind these projects. So many of them are absolutely doable. If these projects could be implemented, our neighborhoods and cities would be much, much improved. We are hopefully going to find ways to make this happen. We're trying to put some of these teams in touch with CSR funds and find other means to get sponsorship. I think the jury too was impressed by the breadth of the thinking and had a difficult time making a selection. We had quite an international jury headed by Jagan Shah as the chair, and Sandra Barclay, Bill Mcelroy, Ilse Wolf, and Kapil Gupta. We will go back to Tahir now, who will announce the prize winners. With each prize, we will have a member of the jury talk about the project and read the citation.
Before I get to the citations of the You and Your Neighborhood competition, I'll read a passage from Place in the Shade, a book that we've recently listed on Amazon, and if you don't have it, you can get it. It's just 950 rupees. Correa writes that to reach the millions who lie on the pavements and in the shanty towns is to get involved in a whole new series of issues to which we must bring the instincts and skills of the architect. He goes further at a lecture in 1984, where he says that at its most vital, architecture is an agent of change. To invent tomorrow, that is its finest function. During the conference, we started at the scale of the city and gradually got more and more intimate to the commons, the streets, and then finally the doorstep and home. For the competition, let's go the other way. Let us start at the scale of the home. Over here, the jury looked for innovative tactical solutions that address thresholds. The award, accompanied by a cash prize of 75,000 rupees, goes to the project titled Plugged In Commons by Sindhuja and Nanja Chopra. Congratulations, Nanja and Sindhuja. I'll ask Ilse Wolf to say a few words.
For me, the projects overall really portrayed a deep sense and a desire for public culture. The spaces in which public culture can really be expressed is in public space, and I think that the attention that was given to designing and to reappropriate public space for the expression of collective public culture was really important and was really well portrayed in many of the submissions and many of the winning submissions. The strong submissions was really kind of homage to collective action. For me, the project that really portrayed this quite boldly and was a kind of a bold proclamation and a kind of a bold provocation and a call for collective action is the housing project in Bangalore, the Plugged In Commons. And for me, this project was quite strong in a kind of like unapologetic call for collective action of how we can actually provide a kind of a toolkit where the city is built by citizens themselves in an imaginative way, and thinking of the use of urban farming, urban agriculture in an imaginative way to reclaim a kind of a different image of the city. The project included a very provocative collage, which is essentially submitting an image for that idea, which I found extremely compelling, and I found extremely, there's a deep desire and a kind of a call for collective action, and there's a deep belief in that, and which I found really refreshing. So congratulations to all the winning entries, and I felt really proud to be part of this process, and I felt refreshed in this kind of very dark time of a pandemic. There is such a strong belief in in making space for collective public culture. Thank you very much.
As we move along, we get to the streets in the neighborhood's threshold. We received a lot of entries in this threshold. Many entries in this category focused on the development of urban neighborhoods through linkages. The award was finally given to the project titled Neighborhood Locale Panjim by Sushma Aradhya. Congratulations, Sushma. You will additionally be awarded a cash prize of 75,000 rupees. I'd like to ask Kapil Gupta to say a few words.
Hi, my name is Kapil Gupta. I'd like to thank the Charles Correa Foundation for having me as a juror at the Your Neighbourhood competition. It just seems so timely given the pandemic. It's given us all a moment for pause to think about our context, our neighborhood, the spaces that we inhabit, that surround us, and an opportunity to come up with ideas to think about how we can revitalize these spaces across different scales, from that of the city down to our doorstep. The project is for the category of the streets in the neighborhood by Sushma Aradhya, and this site is located in the Fontanas area in Panjim in Goa. And this is an extremely well conserved, a historic and a vibrant neighborhood. The Fontanas was actually the older Latin quarters of Goa. But what it always lacked was a viable and a public waterfront, despite being flanked by a creek and a river. This project seeks to widen the Rue de Orem, which runs along the eastern edge of the Fontanas and the Orem Creek, to create a new public promenade. This will enable the lively and the winding streets that you find in this 200-year-old dense settlement to terminate into an expansive linear public space, stimulating social and cultural events along the water's edge. The project was very well presented with a series of thoughtful and elegant urban design ideas to activate promenade life, or rather promenade life. The jury appreciated its sensitivity both to an architectural and the urban scale, which makes the proposal very desirable and hence extremely achievable. If done well, the project will be a valuable enhancement to the historical fabric of Panjim. Thank you.
As we proceed to Commons and the City, the jury selected a project titled the Trichy Commons Network by Kapilan and Vijay Kumar. They too will receive a cash prize of 75,000 rupees. We know that a group of citizens in Trichy have been closely following the developments in this project. So congratulations, Kapilan and Vijay. Some good news to tell your stakeholders. I request Bill Mcelroy to speak about this project.
Hello, I'm Bill Mcelroy, an architect and urban designer based in Boston, Massachusetts. The Trichy Commons Network proposal was one of the most impressive submissions across the whole Z-Axis competition. It was the unanimous choice to receive the award for the best project in the Threshold Category B, Commons in the City. It is a project of design intelligence and legibility. It identifies an urban condition that applies to many cities and towns, not only across India but around the world. On the periphery of Trichy, the Uakondian Canal is transformed from a disadvantaged, thoroughly neglected sewage dump that acts as a dividing line in the community into an asset where the revitalized canal becomes an agent of connection for the people who live beside it. The proposal works across several scales in many ways through a series of interventions. Together they act as a catalyst that could trigger major positive change over time. The scheme's originality is in its combination of seemingly incompatible urban elements. At the large scale, working at the level of urban infrastructure and landscape urbanism, a wastewater management and rainwater facility is proposed. It harvests and filters polluted water and reintroduces the treated water back into the canal. The clean water also irrigates the newly planted Miyawaki forest plantation along its banks. Located next to the waste management complex is a community meeting hall with a diverse educational and cultural program, including a library with internet access. A third element is a public open space incorporating child's playground and a youth area. Other fine-scaled urban elements include a pedestrian and cycling bridge linking both sides of the canal and a series of small platforms at the end of the neighborhood streets overlooking the canal for informal gatherings. During our jury deliberations, my colleagues and I had an active discussion about the meaning and symbolism of the light metal fencing indicated in the project's three-dimensional drawings. To secure the space was seen as necessary, but surely for this place to be a community resource for everyone, its borders needed to be broken down. We wondered if a more subtle solution could be thought of. One way to think of this concern could be to rearrange the combination of elements. If the children's play space and volleyball court were reconfigured into a courtyard, a kind of outdoor room, they could be bounded by the waste management building and the meeting hall. A compound would then be created where the public space would be embraced by the buildings rather than merely being fenced. I noticed in the comprehensive video and a photograph of the existing conditions on the first sheet of the submission, a religious building located on the neighborhood side of the canal bank. This archaic building has a monolithic resonance that I feel the present architectural language of the scheme could be inspired by in a contemporary way. This small but monumental simple GOT structure has a civic presence that the wastewater plant and meeting hall deserve. Notwithstanding, this project has an expansiveness about it that is both based in gritty realism and a forward-looking spirit. Its authors paid special attention to its context. It is a critique against the routine master planning attitude. Instead, it is based on an approach that works at the intersection of urbanism and environmental responsibility through citizen activism. In recognizing this project, we offer our support for its continuation and final implementation.
At the scale of redefining the city for the public, we have 2 awards. Over here, the jury identified an honorable mention, which is awarded to Aishwarya Gupta for her entry titled Workshop at the Metro Station. Congratulations, Aishwarya. I'll ask Jagan Shah to say a few words.
Hello. I'd like to commend Aishwarya Gupta for getting an honorable mention for her proposal for a workshop at the metro station. I found it particularly interesting because it takes a very common typology now in metro areas, the metro station, and in a sense blows it apart and suggests that this metro station need not only be a transition point for people to move between the metro line and the street, but could also become the node where a number of smaller activities which are related to the informal sector, to vendors, to small enterprises, can be accommodated at the station itself. This is quite a challenging proposition because the image of the metro is one that, it's in a sense high above the ground. It is highly sort of high-tech and expensive for many people. And the image needs to be questioned, and Aishwarya's proposal actually is really suggesting that this kind of infrastructure can be treated with great equitability, it can be treated with more imagination, and we can address our larger social and economic peculiarities through exploring these typologies a little deeper. So really appreciated Aishwarya's thinking in terms of the kinds of activities she has proposed. A workshop, for instance, is not something you associate with a metro station location, but none of this interferes with the activities of the metro station. It simply adds on, supplements, and in my understanding, improves the offering that the metro system makes. In some senses, it also creates a greater equitability between a kind of commercial viewpoint of metro infrastructure. So when we make malls or we make fast food restaurants at metro stations, we don't find it particularly peculiar. But what Aishwarya is saying is that why can't it actually be the enterprises that are more closer to the informal economy and so on. So these are challenging propositions. The jury had to think really hard about this. But I think one of the factors that really swayed a number of the jury members was the sheer love and detail and the quality of the presentation, which showed that Aishwarya has looked at this reality in great granular detail, has thought about this from the perspective of a humanist who wants to accommodate the public and the commons into their approach to infrastructure. And most of all, it represents the kind of vibrancy that we have in our cities and captures that with a graphic style and with color in such a way that this makes quite a compelling proposition. Thank you, Aishwarya.
And we have the project that won the award for the city scale, Nurturing Neighborhoods by Purvi Chadwa. All the threshold awardees will additionally get a cash prize of 75,000. I request Sandra Barclay to speak briefly about this project.
In the category Redefining the City for the People, we chose as winner Nurturing Neighborhoods, Approach Towards Shaping Inclusive Play Space in Wadi Ahmedabad. We appreciate a lot the proposal because it is employing very little means, really only what is there already in place and available. It has the potential to transform the experience of the street, the experience of public space for children and families in their daily life routines. First, the project identified irregular distributions of lanes, existing vacant land, and extra width at the service road. Then, the project established in section a marked difference between a high-speed route for vehicles and the BRTS lane and a newly created portion with another speed, a more slow way of using the public space that can be shared by different types of mobility and pedestrians. And finally, the project does it without any major intervention, just putting some order, using the vacant land, pushing aside a little bit the road, planting trees, and this strategy makes the project very realistic and feasible and doesn't need a lot of resources. This project is addressing a universal problem, and it helps to imagine that in a consolidated and dense city, you can still transform the leftovers into public space.
Finally, the project we have been waiting for, the You and Your Neighbourhood Jury Award, and an accompanying prize of 1 lakh rupees. The jury looked at entries across 4 thresholds and thought long and hard about which entry could possibly be awarded the You and Your Neighbourhood Jury Award. After a lot of discussion and deliberation, the jury has identified the project titled Colliding Domains, prepared by Kalpit Ashar and Mayuri Sisodia. Congratulations, Kalpit and Mayuri. I'm going to bring back Kapil Gupta, Sandra Barclay, and Jagan Shah and ask the 3 of them to give us a brief citation explaining why they appreciated this particular project.
I'd like to talk about the jury award-winning project by Kalpit Ashar and Mayuri Sisodia. And I think this was a very intrepid attempt to reclaim the sidewalks along Shaukat Ali Road as a crucial public and community space, especially for the dense and congested neighborhoods that flank its entire length. This remains a highly contested site, and these pavements have shrunk over time with informal occupations and encroachments of street commerce, private interests, and poorly managed commons, all of them vying for space along this primary artery that actually runs north-south through the city of Bombay. And what was interesting about the project was that, through a very challenging participatory process, which was informed by strong research and in-situ site mappings, which I was actually very impressed with. The proposal presents strong and viable ideas for re-widening these sidewalks, infusing creative imagination of a public life that can once again enrich the lives of these people who live and work in these dense settlements.
We love the project Colliding Domains. It was compelling in the way the team studied and tried to organize every corner, every person, every activity, every speed, as if they were really working for each of the social actors in this symbiotic ecosystem, as they call it, fully negotiating to equally share this grand route.
The aspect of this proposal that I appreciate the most is that the architect is working with the city administration to resolve the multitude of negotiations and conflicts and contestations that happen at ground level in all cities. And resolving these is only possible through the act of design, the intervention of somebody who understands how materials, spaces, and people come together. And this is something city administrations don't understand, and something that architects understand very well.
And to everyone else who took part in the competition, we are really, really thankful that you took out time to take part in this and to think about ideas to improve your neighborhood. Bill has a small note for you on behalf of all of the jury. Bill, if I can please request you to come back on.
Finally, I'd like to say to those of you whose projects weren't called out, we on the jury saw many imaginative ideas. Some were perhaps not as developed in their form language as they could have been. Other projects, both large and small, were very specific, but not fully convincing in terms of connecting to their place or how they might have been implemented. Whatever the case, your project will mark this challenging period for you, when COVID-19 has changed everything for everyone in a productive and personal way. Value what you did, and congratulations to you all who participated in the competition and therefore greatly contributed to the Charles Correa Foundation Z-Access Conference. Thank you.
Thank you, Bill, and to the jury for your comments. And a big thank you to all those who participated in the competitions. So also to the members of the two juries, the mentors, the speakers at the conference, the podcasters, so many who helped put these events together. Thank you to the sponsors, to the A.T. Chandra Foundation, Titan, Okai, HDFC, the Raza Foundation, and many others who've been very generous in this year of real hardship. Your generosity has been invaluable. It has encouraged us to do all this, as these issues in our cities are of crucial importance. Thank you too for the team at CCF, Tahir and the fellows and researchers, Parshav, Anisha, Vaibhav, Bansi, and to Sogam and Dominic. Without their dedicated help, none of this would have been possible. Thank you all. Thank you for joining us today. Bye.